How did the housing market perform in 2024, and what are you expecting for next year?
Well, it's actually been quite remarkably resilient this year, considering we had a stretched affordability. And I remember coming onto your show at the start of this year, and we had data coming out showing a recession in 2023, and we're talking about a potential crash. And here we are at the end of the year, where prices have increased potentially about 4%. And it's largely due to mortgage rates falling and people earning more than inflation. And those are the key reasons why prices have been rising this year. And we're expecting that to continue next year with mortgage rates falling again and expecting 4% growth next year. However, I would caveat this because the Bank of England is likely to cut rates by less than the Federal Reserve or the ECB. And these gradual cuts mean affordability will be stretched for longer. We were expecting the long-term average in affordability to be met this year, but it's now going to be 1 year later. So people are still going to be stretched. The thing about one thing to also remember is stamp duty. Right. So people will want to avoid paying more stamp duty from April. And so there's likely to be a rush beforehand. And that's where we're talking about a bumpy ride next year.
So, Niraj, where are mortgage rates headed? We've seen, as you mentioned, this repricing, right, of how many cuts the Bank of England can do next year.
It's quite fascinating, isn't it? At the start of this year, the markets were expecting 6 rate cuts. In the end, we got 2 cuts. Next year, we're expecting 4 rate cuts. The markets are expecting less, about 3. So, but at ballpark figure, rates should be at 3.75% by the end of next year. Again, we were expecting that by this year. And again, I'm repeating this, but it's shown resilience despite that.
Interest rates are still quite high. So what does it mean for first-time buyers?
So this is a double whammy for first-time buyers. So on the one hand, they're facing increasing rents, at record rents in London, above 11%. So that makes it much more difficult to save for a deposit. And at the same time, you have mortgage rates still very elevated. So it's a real challenge for them. And the other whammy, or adding salt to the wound, if you like, is essentially from April. They're the ones who are going to face the biggest rise in stamp duty increases. And so there's this incentive for them to act now, but it's going to be tough.
Niraj, the government has also set this target of building 1.5 million homes in the next 5 years. It seems huge. It's a huge number. Can they actually achieve it?
So many governments in the past have tried and failed. And I think we have to look back at how things have happened in the past. And if you look back, you have to go back to the 70s so you have to basically build more than 300,000 a year. And it was in the 70s where you got to 250,000. So even that was less. So it's a big challenge, and a big challenge because, one, we have planning restrictions still. And even though the government has talked about loosening these, it's still going to be a big ordeal to get through that. But also, we don't have capacity in terms of labour and so on. So it's going to be a big challenge to meet.